Good evening. This is All India Radio. I'm Anubha Rohatgi with the news at 9. The headlines. Two-day G20 Foreign Ministers meeting under India's presidency gets underway in New Delhi. Formal meeting to be held tomorrow. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holds series of bilateral talks with his counterparts from several countries on sidelines of the meeting. India calls upon G20 nations to adopt multilateral action for faster extradition of fugitive economic offenders and recovery of assets. India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geo-strategy, Raisina Dialogue, to be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi tomorrow. All arrangements in place for counting of votes tomorrow for assembly elections in Nagaland, Meghalaya and Tripura. And in cricket, Australia lead by 47 runs against India in the first innings at Stumps on opening day of the third Test of Border Gavaskar Trophy at Indore. The two-day G20 Foreign Ministers meeting under India's presidency got underway in New Delhi today. A gala dinner is being hosted this evening for the visiting dignitaries. The formal meeting will be held tomorrow with the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar chairing two sessions. The first session will focus on multilateralism and issues related to food and energy. The second session will focus on new and emerging threats, including counter-terrorism and narcotics, global skill mapping and focus on global talent pools. Briefing media, Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra informed that 40 delegations and 30 international organizations are expected to participate in the meeting at the Rashtrapati Bhavan Cultural Center.
It is one of the largest gathering of the foreign ministers hosted by any G20 presidency. The theme of India's G20 presidency, as has been enunciated repeatedly, is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. For India, the G20 presidency also marks the beginning of Amrit Kal, which will lead to the centenary of our independence towards a futuristic, prosperous, inclusive and developed society with human-centric approach at its very core.
On the sidelines of the meeting, the External Affairs Minister today held a series of bilateral talks with his counterparts from several countries on various bilateral issues and global agenda. Dr. Jaishankar and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov exchanged their views on bilateral cooperation and G20 issues. With his UK counterpart, James Cleverly, Dr. Jaishankar reviewed the progress in the India-UK relationship since their last discussion. Sources said the UK Foreign Secretary brought up the BBC tax issue during the meeting. He was firmly told that all entities operating in India must comply fully with relevant laws and regulations. The External Affairs Minister also met his Netherlands, Mexican, Argentinian, South African and Nigerian counterparts. India today called upon G20 nations to adopt multilateral action for faster extradition of fugitive economic offenders and recovery of assets, both on the domestic front and abroad. Chairing the first anti-corruption working group meeting of G20 nations in Gurugram, the Minister of State for Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, Dr. Jitendra Singh, highlighted the problems faced by our country when its economic offenders flee from the jurisdiction. He said that the adverse impact of such incidents on a country can be seen in the effective utilization of resources, the quality of life of the citizens, economic growth and overall governance, and most disproportionately affecting the poor and most marginalized. Dr. Singh underlined that India has already put in place specialized legislation in this regard.
Under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, put in place a specialized legislation a few years back in the form of Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018. The term wherein the fugitive economic offender is defined as an individual against whom a warrant of arrest in relation to scheduled offence has been issued by any court in India and who has left the country so as to avoid criminal prosecution, or the offender abroad refuses to return to face the criminal prosecution back home.
The first meeting of the G20 Steering Committee was chaired virtually by UAE Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, in Abu Dhabi today. The meeting focused on the UAE's G20 summit priorities for 2023, following the Indian G20 presidency's invitation to participate as a guest country. The minister noted that India's G20 presidency reflects the country's leadership in hosting major global events to promote international cooperation and achieve sustainable development goals worldwide. India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geo-strategy, Raisina Dialogue, will be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi tomorrow. The 8th edition of the dialogue will continue till 4th March. Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, will join the inaugural session as the chief guest. The theme of the 2023 edition of the dialogue is Provocation, Uncertainty, Turbulence, Lighthouse in the Tempest. Raisina Dialogue 2023 will witness participation of representatives from over 100 countries, including ministers, military commanders, captains of the industry, technology leaders, scholars on strategic affairs, experts from leading think tanks and youth. This year's edition assumes special significance, coming against the backdrop of India's G20 presidency. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today said that well-planned cities are going to be the need of the hour in the fast-paced environment of India in the 21st century. He was sharing his remarks at a post-budget webinar on urban planning, development and sanitation. He said urban planning will determine the fate of the country's cities in Amrit Kal. He underlined that the development of new cities and the modernization of services in the existing cities are the two main aspects of urban development.
अब 21वीं सदी में जिस तरह भारत तेज गति से विकास कर रहा है, आने वाले समय में अनेकों नए शहर ये भारत की अनिवार्यता होने वाली है। ऐसे में भारत में अर्बन डेवलपमेंट के दो प्रमुख पक्ष हैं, नए शहरों का विकास और पुराने शहरों में पुरानी व्यवस्थाओं का आधुनिकीकरण। इसी विजन को सामने रखते हुए हमारी सरकार ने हर बजट में अर्बन डेवलपमेंट को बहुत महत्व दिया है।
The government has approved the procurement of 70 HTT-40 basic trainer aircraft from Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for the Indian Air Force at a cost of over 6,828 crore rupees. The aircraft will be supplied over a period of 6 years. The decision was taken during the Union Cabinet meeting. The government has also approved the signing of a contract with Larsen & Toubro Limited for the acquisition of 3 cadet training ships at an overall cost of 3,108 crore rupees. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts. Welcome back to the news at 9. All arrangements are in place for counting of votes for the assembly elections in the northeastern states of Nagaland, Meghalaya and Tripura. Counting will start at 8 a.m. tomorrow, with postal ballots to be taken up first. Thereafter, votes polled in the electronic voting machines will be counted. Nagaland and Meghalaya went to polls on Monday, while voting in Tripura was held on 16th February. Elaborate security arrangements have been made at all the centres. A report from our Shillong correspondent.
The EVMs that have stored the political fate of 369 candidates, including from 4 national parties like BJP and Congress, are at the strong rooms amidst 3-tier security arrangements in Meghalaya. About 85.25% of over 21,40,000 voters have cast their vote on last Monday. As per the Election Commission of India's guidelines, the VVPAT slips also will be counted. Minimum number of 4 candidates were in the contest at Sutna, Moirang and Empathy Assembly constituencies, while maximum of 9 candidates each were in the contest from Danikor and Dalu constituencies. Meanwhile, in the wake of counting of votes, the East Khasi Hills District Magistrate prohibited victory rallies till 4 p.m. on Saturday. Lakshmi, AIR News, Shillong.
Our Kohima correspondent has filed this report.
Political fate of NDPP leader and incumbent Chief Minister Nefurio and Deputy Chief Minister Y. Patan, among others, will be decided. History will be created in Nagaland tomorrow. Today, if any female candidate manages to win this time, the BJP already bagged 1 seat. The ruling BJP and NDPP fought the election in coalition, while the other parties, including MPF, Congress, LJP, have contested without any alliance. With Asonu, Manas Pratim Sharma, AIR News, Kohima.
And here's a report from our Agartala correspondent.
The counting will be held at 21 counting centers across the state, in which the fate of 259 candidates will be decided. Some of the prominent candidates whose fate will be decided are senior BJP leader and incumbent Chief Minister Dr. Manik Saha and Deputy Chief Minister Jishnudev Varman. To maintain peace, the Election Commission undertook outreach peace meetings which were held at over 3,300 polling stations where around 3.5 lakh people participated. Kunal Shinde, AIR News, Agartala.
All India Radio brings to you People's Mandate from the northeastern states of Nagaland, Tripura and Meghalaya. Special live discussions and ground reports, accurate updates on election results and in-depth analysis by eminent experts. Stay tuned to FM Gold for exclusive minute-to-minute live updates on 2nd March from 10 a.m. onwards.
The Chemicals and Fertilizers Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandavia today flagged off the Jan Aushadhi Rath in New Delhi to commence celebrations of the Jan Aushadhi Jan Chetna Abhiyan. Speaking on the occasion, Dr. Mandavia said the focus will be laid on creating awareness about Jan Aushadhi amongst people during the Jan Aushadhi week. He said medicines are available at the Jan Aushadhi Kendras at affordable prices. Over 1,49,000 crore rupees gross Goods and Service Tax GST revenue was collected last month. GST revenue collection has registered 12% growth in the last month in comparison to the same period of the previous financial year. In February 2022, over 1,33,000 crore rupees were collected as GST revenue. The Finance Ministry said the monthly GST revenue collection is more than 1,40,000 crore rupees for 12 straight months in a row. The ministry said the highest cess collection of over 11,900 crore rupees was registered in the last month since the implementation of GST in the country. The Sensex and the Nifty today witnessed gains of more than 0.5%. Both stocks rose amid mixed global cues. A report from our business desk.
The Sensex climbed 449 points to finish at 59,412. The Nifty 50 also rose 147 points to settle at 17,451. At the multi-commodity exchange, gold futures for April were trading at 55,860 rupees per 10 grams. And in intraday trade, oil slipped as signs of ample supply and rising U.S. crude inventories countered hopes for higher demand arising from a jump in manufacturing in top crude importer China. Gaura Dhawanlal for AIR News.
In cricket, Australia were 156 for 4 in their first innings against India on day 1 of the third test of the Border Gavaskar Trophy at Indore when Stumps were drawn this evening. The visitors are leading by 47 runs as India were all out for 109 runs in 33.2 overs in their first innings. Australian spinner trio C. Alex Carey, B. M. Kuhneman and B. Leon ripped through India's fragile batting lineup. The hosts had won the toss and opted to bat first, but the move backfired as the hosts lost 7 wickets in the opening session. India, however, have retained the trophy, winning the first 2 tests of the 4-match series. Asia's longest ever cycle race was flagged off from Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir today. The race, covering a distance of more than 3,000 kilometers, will culminate at Kanyakumari. 29 cyclists, including one woman, set off for the first of its kind 3,651-kilometer long event. The route for this cycle race will include the longest highway, the National Highway 44, and will pass through 12 major states, 3 major metropolitan cities, and over 20 major cities of the country. And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. 2-day G20 Foreign Ministers meeting under India's presidency gets underway in New Delhi. Formal meeting to be held tomorrow. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holds series of bilateral talks with his counterparts from several countries on the sidelines of the meeting. India calls upon G20 nations to adopt multilateral action for faster extradition of fugitive economic offenders and recovery of assets. India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geo-strategy, Raisina Dialogue, to be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi tomorrow. All arrangements in place for counting of votes tomorrow for assembly elections in Nagaland, Meghalaya and Tripura. And in cricket, Australia lead by 47 runs against India in the first innings at Stumps on the opening day of the third test of Border Gavaskar Trophy at Indore. And that is all in the news at 9. Good night.